this week's episode of Benchwarmers. It's your boy. Sorry I was off last week. I was in Vegas, go figure, with my wife and enjoying our last little bit of PTO before Christmas. And yeah, I'll kind of explain what happened there toward the end of the show. But anyway, if you're not able to catch the show live, you can always catch us on YouTube at Hat-Club. Be sure to subscribe to us, which is a fancy word for follow, and give us a like if you like what you see. Chat lively today. JM1620 in the house. Logan Herrera, best of AZ. My name is Eric Yeh. And Southside Steven Seabright, sporting events, of course. But before we go into the sporting events, yes, thank you. 12 Days of Hatmas, which is going to be kicking off tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, hatclub.com, Hatclub app. This, of course, is the one that I put together. Little Oakland A's. Welcome to paradise, if you will. Shout out to Green Day and, of course, the 30th anniversary of the Dookie album, which was hands down one of the greatest albums I ever got as a Christmas gift, and still have it today, as a matter of fact. Actually, no, that's a lie. I had to return it 2 different times due to the language content on that album, because my father did not approve, despite the fact that my mother is the one that gave it to me as a Christmas gift. And as I got older, I eventually moved out of the house and bought it again. CD. But I do have it on vinyl as well. So that was definitely a pickup I got, 12, 13 years ago, something on the lines of that. So had to get that crispness of the vinyl on the needle. So, because, as we all know, vinyl always just sounds better. It's warm. It's got that nice crackle to it. So, but speaking of new acquisitions, got some new jerseys in the meantime. So, hold on. Tone Cruz with a story. My sister went through that over DMX CD. I can totally understand that. Yeah, essentially when I lived with my dad, so this was all the way up through when I was 17 years old. Anything that had a parental advisory sticker on it, that was a no-fly zone. So always kept it secret, or hope to God it didn't have the advisory sticker, and knowing some of the lyrics were hot, hopefully they weren't printed on the inside of the album jacket. So that was the only way I got away with it. But yeah, anything with a parental advisory sticker, that shit was going back to the store. My God. That's so crazy. Southside seems right. I got Adam Sandler's They're All Gonna Laugh at You taken away, which honestly, yeah, I can understand that. I can totally understand that. That was one of my favorite comedy albums of all time too. Had the whole damn thing memorized, did all the voices and stuff. That's a story for another day. But anyway, New Jersey pickups, because it's been a good stretch of time since the last time I acquired any. But then again, last time I did the show. So starting off with 1996 Olympic team. So number 5, the home jersey for Grant Hill. The only one I got left to go is going to be the navy blue version of this. So just kind of waiting for find one at the right price. I think I get this one for like $30. So kind of surprising considering the fact that a lot of Dream Team 3 jerseys or 2 or 1 kind of go for ludicrous prices. But I've noticed over the last couple months that prices on champion jerseys seem to be dropping, which I guess is a good sign for me. But what's really weird is, like, over the last year, outside of obviously the Reggie Miller ones that I've had for years and years and years, I started acquiring more players from Dream Team 1, 2, and 3. And not necessarily because like I want them, but it was just because like the price on them is pretty fair. So it's like, all right, well, there's nothing else new that I need that's coming up, whatever. So I'll just throw my money at that. So anyway, Grant Hill, home jersey, 96. And then going back to Dream Team 1, so the 1992 team, was not expecting to find this. And this is another acquisition I got for like 30, $35. Number 15, that is Michigan State's own Magic Johnson. So home jersey, once again. Which actually is another interesting story on top of which too. When trying to track down any of the Dream Team 1 players or the original Dream Team players, so 92, you tend to find the white jerseys a little bit more often, which is kind of weird considering the fact that home jerseys for any player, and I'm talking about just basic NBA jerseys, are way harder to find than the road or the color jerseys. So don't know why that is. Trying to find a navy blue Dream Team 1 jersey is like finding gold. So if you come across one at a great price in your size, buy it. Or if it's a size 48, let me know and I'll scoop it up because, like I said, those ones are damn hard to find. And I'm still trying to find a Christian Leitner in the navy blue. Got the white one, but still need the navy blue one. So anyway, um, a lot has happened in sports since the last time we had our little fireside chat. So, more specifically with college football, which is the way I'm going to start this show off, even though we're about a week and a half in the past on this one. But because I didn't do the show last Monday on account of being in Vegas, I got to bring everybody back up to speed. And of course, going to start with the Big 12 championship game. Shout out to the Pac 12. It died at the end of last college football season. Of course, I'm still beguiled at the fact that Oregon lost to Washington twice last year by a field goal, which happened in the regular season matchup as well. And so the very last Pac 12 championship, of course, was won by the goddamn University of Washington Huskies. Because not only do we have Oregon Ducks being the number one team in the country, the Arizona State Sun Devils, just whatever fire got lit under their asses down the stretch, is proved to be very, very good for them. And most notably, going into the Big 12 championship game where they played Iowa State and whooped their ass by the score of 45-19. And most notably, and I'm going to bring this up, a first place vote for the Heisman Award this year. Why he was kind of left out toward the end of the season, even though he just absolutely dominated and was, arguably the biggest factor. Mysteries. But if he's coming back, I fully expect him to be a top 3 finisher in regard to the Heisman Award next year. But either way, got to show the photo, of course, receiving the Big 12 championship belt from oh my god, I am just totally just drained on the name. I can't remember if this is Jimmy or Jay Uso. I think it's Jimmy. I think it's Jimmy. Steven, help me out with this one. I've been under the radar in months, so I apologize if this is Jay and not Jimmy. But shout out to whichever Uso brother, the full rock outfit, the gold. That's missing is the fanny pack. Um, but yes, the Uso and still kicking ass in the devil. But most notably, shout out to Arizona State, Big 12 champs, first year in the Big 12, and not to mention the thing that's most important about them making the championship game, let alone winning it, is the fact that they were picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 this year. So shout out to them. Playoff, which we'll get to in a little bit. Guys, there came down to a field goal in the end, of course, in overtime. Um, sorry, by that I mean a field goal score. Sorry, because Etienne, the running back for Georgia, of course, did win the game in overtime for Georgia. But Carson Beck, the starting quarter injury at the end of the first half. So, of course, Georgia had to go to their backup quarterback, Stockton, to finish the game out and did pretty well until we got to the overtime period. And tried to do a quarterback keeper to win the game himself and got absolutely rocked. Uh, Borderline knocked unconscious. So definitely a concussion that was involved there. Helmet knocked off, knee full as he was, dropping to the ground. Shout out to him for holding a noble effort by him. But of course, Carson Beck, injury and all, was able to come back in the game on the 1 yard line for Georgia and hand the ball off to Etienne to get the final touchdown. 22-19, final score in the SEC championship game. No surprise to see Georgia back in the college football playoff, especially as the field expanded to the 12 games. Still a bit surprising they're getting a first week bye, but we'll discuss that a little bit more here in a minute. And there, of course, your SEC champion, Georgia Bulldogs. This one, the ACC title game. It did not start out great for SMU. First half just absolutely dominated by Clemson. Trivia question that I never asked you, but it comes up, that did not have any players who entered the transfer portal go to their school. Army, Navy are the obvious two because those are military academies. And the third one, Clemson, because Dabo Sweeney hates NIL and hates the transfer portal in general. But shout out to the heart and grit of the SMU Mustangs closing couple inners, etc. But unfortunately, it took a kick return of 40 plus yards and then a field goal in the yards out of Aiken championship for Clemson. Of course, they've won multiple ACC championship games over the last decade, so it's no real surprise to see them in the mix there, let alone win it. But you know what? We love this one off, not only because that was for, when I did the last show, but most notably, I just want to see moving on through with their ACC championship trophy. And then, of course, last but not least, your Oregon Ducks taking on Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, much like Arizona State in the Big 12. Oregon, first year in the conference, first year in the championship game, first year dominating and winning the championship outright. Yes, I'm not going to say dominating in the sense of, they blew Penn State out of the water, but they did dominate the Big Ten. They did get to the championship game and they did win it. So, and still the only undefeated team left in college football. Final score in this game, of course, was 45-37. Daniel Gabriel, amazing game, 4 touchdown passes, to which the first 3 touchdown passes went to his tight end core of Turd Ferguson. That's it. It's not his real name, but Turd Ferguson because of Saturday Night Live and Jeopardy and stuff like Sadiq, 2 touchdown passes in this beautiful first possession of the game. Really just like set the tone and set the pace for how this game was going to be, because Penn State was playing catch up throughout the majority of the game. And then kind of the other thing to note from this is, as much as Penn State's whine and bicker about, oh, well, the refs, had it in favor of Oregon and blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, the refs didn't make you miss a field goal, and the refs certainly didn't make you incapable of converting a 2-point conversion. So you take 5 points there, and you lost by 8. So cool. We'll give you 3 points on that. Either way, Oregon was definitely going to win this game. Yes, I was a bit nervous at times and a bit frustrated with the way things were going, but overall, Oregon really didn't make any mistakes. And honestly, the 2 interceptions that Oregon was able to recover really told the tale as far as like how Oregon dominated this game. Yes, defensively, neither team could get to the quarterback, could stop a running back, etc. which is kind of hilarious considering the fact that Penn State and Oregon are both 1 and 2 in sacks on the season. So their defensive lines were pretty stellar. Excuse me, but only recorded 1 sack each in this game. So shout out to the Oregon Ducks for getting the job done. Boom. There's Coach Dan Lanning and company celebrating that Big Ten championship game. And of course, getting the number 1 overall seed for the college football playoff, which here's the bracket. Um, the biggest surprise, of course, is one, Arizona State being the 4 seed. But that's what happens when you win your conference championship game, and especially considering the fact that they had a pretty stellar season altogether. Yeah, you can make the argument record-wise, they probably shouldn't be there, but at the same time, you can't argue it. So, shout out to them, 4 seed. They're gonna be taking on the winner of the Clemson-Texas game. Oregon at the 1 seed gets the winner of the Tennessee-Ohio State game. That game, of course, is gonna be at the Rose Bowl, which I was hoping to go to, but it's too goddamn expensive to go, so I'm probably not gonna be going. Boise State gets the winner of the SMU-Penn State game, and then Georgia gets the winner of the Indiana Notre Dame game. Logan Herrera says, and of the big 4, they are the most worthy. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Um, the other thing I was going to point out that I think we were all very excited about going back to last Sunday when they did the, who's going to make it, spectacular show, whatever. And the fact that SMU got in. Granted, yes, they lost the ACC championship game, but it was by a last second field goal. So thank God their second half like completely righted their season outcome by getting them into the game, which ultimately knocked out Alabama, a 3-loss Alabama at that, which of course we were all very happy to see because you got Texas in there, you got Tennessee, you got Georgia. So you already got 3 SEC representatives right there. Big Ten's got a lot as well behind Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, and Indiana. So 4 teams there. It's really more of a question of how far any of those other teams are going to go. But Boise State, rightfully there, rightfully getting a first round bye, even though they play in the Mountain West and won that championship game. But the thing you got to remember with that is their only loss on the season, of course, is to the number 1 team in the country, the University of Oregon Ducks. And they only lost by 3 points. Ashton Jontes ran for over 200 yards in that game and had, I think, 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. So they were worthy of being there. Arizona State is about the only one you can make an argument. Well, it could have been Texas, it could have been Indiana, it could have been else and else and else. But I'm not going to play that game because none of those other schools won their conference championship game. Arizona State did. So Logan Herrera says, had SMU beat Clemson like they should have, I think Bama or Ole Miss sneak in and SMU gets the bye instead of ASU. I actually 100% agree with that, just because the fact that SMU had an overall better record than Arizona State. And yeah, Clemson would have been a 3-loss team at that point. So I could see that. I think honestly it would have been Alabama over Ole Miss getting that last spot, just because the losses that Ole Miss had, I feel like were worse than the losses that Alabama had. Yeah, Alabama did lose to Vanderbilt and Miami, but I feel like Miami shot themselves in the foot because they lost to Syracuse, they lost to Georgia Tech. They weren't even involved in the ACC championship game because of that win by Syracuse over Miami. So it's kind of a weird realm for that. I think honestly, the playoff committee got this entire selection right. My only argument, and I saw a couple other people bring this up as well, is the team with the easiest path to the national championship is the number 2 seed Georgia Bulldogs, because Indiana Notre Dame really aren't much to sniff at, especially considering the fact that Ohio State blew the doors off of Indiana. Notre Dame, of course, lost to Northern Illinois at home. Yeah, it was to a field goal, um, and a blocked field goal on top of which too. Um, so I personally don't think either team is that great. Oregon is the 1 seed, has the toughest path because the fact that they're either going to play against Tennessee, who historically Oregon has done great against Tennessee. They are undefeated against Tennessee, but we're talking about historically. We're not talking about a game that has happened within the last 13, 14, maybe even 15 years. Because I mean, the Tennessee games that I recall were when I was still in school, and that was between '07 and 11. So you're going to get a rematch potentially Oregon versus Ohio State, which of course is going to be a huge draw for people. And especially considering the fact that Oregon only won by 1 point against Ohio State during the regular season. So the Big Ten, the NCAA definitely want that matchup. Um, but anyway, moving on. Arizona State gets either Clemson or Texas. Texas personally didn't look that great in the SEC championship game, but then again, they did play against Georgia. But Arizona State got hot at the right time. So who knows what's going to happen with them. I feel like if Clemson gets an upset win over Texas, that's probably the best case scenario for Arizona State to win that game. And then, of course, there's Boise State going to get the winner of the SMU Penn State game. More than likely, Penn State is going to win that game, but I'm still holding out hope that SMU is going to take them down because of all this. Um, like I said, Oregon's got the toughest path out of this. And the interesting thing that people have brought up, and I've brought it up as well, is yes, let's get through the first round and the quarterfinals, so the second round basically for the top 4 seeds. Then at that point is when you have to jumble it around because there's no reason why Oregon should play in a 9-8. They should be playing the lowest ranked team at this point. So, I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. And of course, because this is the first year of the 12-team college football playoff, there are still some things to figure out. My only knock on this, of course, is the fact that why, of all the goddamn years that we had to start this college football playoff, this 12-team expanded playoff, why does it have to come the year that Oregon is the number one ranked team in the country? Fuck. Because at this point, let's eliminate the other 8 teams and we just have the top 4. So Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State. I find it would be interesting that the first round, 1 in the 4 seed is going to be the 2 Pac-12 teams who won their championship game. So we get that rematch, and especially considering the fact that Kenny Dillingham is a predecessor of the Dan Lanning School of College Football because he was the offensive coordinator for Oregon before he took the Arizona State job. That would be a great matchup. And then, of course, there's Georgia Boise State. And whether or not Austin Jonty is going to be able to run the way he does and the way he does has been all season against the Georgia defense. I find that kind of interesting because then let's say Oregon wins, Georgia wins. You get the Dan Lanning versus Kirby Smart matchup that happened during Dan Lanning's first job or first day as a head coach in college football. And of course, the national championship game is going to be in the same location that game took place, Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's crazy. It's crazy how this all worked out, quote unquote. But the way I see this kind of working out is Texas going to take down Clemson. Ohio State's going to beat Tennessee, Penn State over SMU. And I honestly feel like Indiana has the ability to take down Notre Dame. So then we go into the quarterfinals. So Texas is probably going to beat Arizona State, even though I don't want that to happen. Oregon's going to win the rematch at the Rose Bowl against Ohio State, even though the last time the two teams squared off in the Rose Bowl, I was there, was the '09 into 2010 season, to which case Ohio State did win that game, all because LeGarrette Blount kicked or fumbled the ball and kicked it in the back of the goddamn end zone. That's how Oregon lost. It sucked. But anyway, I see Oregon taking down Ohio State again. Penn State, Boise State's the only one I don't know how this is going to work out. And the main reason why is Oregon was able to run all over Penn State. So if that's the case, Austin Genti should be able to get a 200 plus yard game. But I see people in the comments saying Penn State's going to win. Let's say Penn State's going to win. That's fine. And then Georgia versus Indiana. Georgia probably going to beat the brakes off of Indiana. Sorry, Hoosiers fans. So then you got Oregon versus Texas in the semifinal. That game, of course, is going to be in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. So Oregon, as the 1 seed, only gets home field, basically the home field advantage in one game during the playoffs. and that is the Rose Bowl. Even though it's happening in California, but Ohio State fans travel very well. So is it really a home field advantage? I don't know. But yeah, semifinals against Texas would be in Dallas, which is Austin's back door. Frustrating. And then I can't remember where the semifinal for Georgia versus Penn State's going to be. But either way, I feel like Georgia's going to make it to the national championship. I hope the God Oregon can beat Texas. Once again, historically, the last time Oregon versus Texas, which we're talking like 20 years ago, Oregon did win. I believe that was the Alamo Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. um Oregon Georgia national championship, and I hope to God Oregon finishes their undefeated season, so, and wins the national championship. Get that one, baby. Even though Oregon has 34 total national championships over every sport, the only sport that people seem to care about for Oregon is football. So anyway, hopefully I'm right. But we'll find out this weekend because we got the first round kicking off Saturday and Sunday. So anyway, the Heisman Award took place a couple days ago and was announced. Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Austin Jonti, and of course Travis Hunter were the top 4 candidates for the Heisman Trophy. But Travis Hunter, overall winner on this one. And I would say the point spread between Genty and Hunter was a bit closer than a lot of people kind of expected. But two-way player, I'm not mad about this. I know a lot of people are pretty stewed about it, but it's just the way that it goes. And when you have media backing on top of which too, you're going to win the award. And you can make the case because Colorado played in the Big 12. They had a much tougher schedule than Boise State did. But as I brought up a little bit ago, Boise State's only loss, of course, was to the number 1 ranked Oregon Ducks, to which case Jonty ran down their throats and had an absolutely amazing game. Oregon cannot stop that man. Um, but as a receiver, Travis Hunter, top 3. As a cornerback, top 5. So to be able to do 2 positions in the top of your field in college football, bam. I feel like it was the right decision to give Hunter the award. Now, the one thing that continuously comes up is the goddamn total snaps, 1,356. But let's be real, it's not a stat. I mean, it's a stat because it's on the screen, but it's not one that anybody has given any shit about until this season, which is pretty ridiculous. And yes, Tone Cruz, you're correct. Melvin Gordon didn't win either. And you know who else didn't win? Who probably should have? Toby Gerhart of Stanford. When he lost to, oh my God, running back out of Alabama, whose name escapes me right now. Is it Mark Ingram that year? I could be wrong. But anyway, like let's just be done with this total snaps thing, because the fact that we're not going to talk about this next season. And then we went talk about, oh, well, we haven't seen a player do this in so many years and blah blah blah. Like, everybody seemed to have forgotten about Charles Nelson of the University of Oregon, who did the exact same thing that Travis Hunter did, but got no attention for it. And yes, I'm a bit of a homer for bringing that up, but the man did go to school at the same time as I did, and he was pretty goddamn good at both positions. So anyway, Travis Hunter is your Heisman winner for this year. The one thing that I will criticize voters for in regard to the award season this year is the fact that Travis Hunter got the Fred Biletnikoff Award, which is for the top receiver in the country. And yeah, a little bit ago, I said he was a top 5 receiver. And as you can see right there, receiving yards 1,152, 6th rank in the FBS, receiving touchdown 14th, which is best for second place. The kid from San Jose State, who leads the country in receiving yards and touchdowns, probably should have won it. I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, that's where I bring up media attention, because nobody was giving a shit about San Jose State all season, blah, blah, blah. Moving on. So that's the last I'll say about that. It was Mark Ingram. Okay. Thank you, Tone Cruz. I appreciate that. It was stuck in the brain. Should have been Toby Gerhart that year, but either way. The NFL going back to Thursday. The Niners are in an absolute shitstorm right now. Not to mention the fact that they had a player who didn't even want to play in the second half of the game and is now serving a season-ending suspension as a result of it. The final score in this game, 12-6, nothing but field goals. One of the few games that I was actually able to guess correctly in our Pick'ems league this week, which seems to be a sign that when I get the Thursday game correct, the rest of my week is going to be absolute dog shit. But when I get the Thursday night game wrong, I usually dominate on Sunday and Monday. So anyway, this is how the week started for me. Got a victory there. And now we're going downhill. Commanders, the spread in this game was 7.5 points. And I mean, they had it on lockdown until the fourth quarter when, for whatever reason, they just let the Saints come back and come back and come back. Yes, the Commanders got the win by 1 point with a final score of 20-19. But guys, you had the fucking spread secured. What the hell happened? This is one I got correct. Kansas City Chiefs over the Cleveland Browns by the final score of 21-7. A lot of controversy in regard to this one of saying Travis Kelce didn't get the ball enough. The man got hurt in like the first series of the game because he got his leg caught in the chain gang chain. For the yard markers and stuff. And so maybe it wasn't 100% for the rest of the game. But because the game was in Cleveland, which is where Travis and his brother Jason grew up, they wanted to get him a touchdown, blah, blah, blah. But hey, how about Pat Mahomes getting hurt toward the end of the game? Busted his ankle. So we'll see what happens for that for the rest of the season, even though it's only 2 more games and how that's going to impact any playoff implications. But either way, Chiefs with a 14-point victory there. Here's another one I got correct. Bengals 37-27. First half looked god awful for the Bengals defense, but they got their shit together toward the end. Yeah, they allowed 13 points in the second half, but they still won by 10. Spread in this game, if I remember correctly, was 5.5 points. So thank you for the 10-point victory. Not one that went well for me. I had the Dolphins plus 2.5 on this one. Just for whatever reason, Tua and company could not get the offense going. But that kind of makes sense considering the fact that the Texans actually have a pretty substantial defense. So 20-12 victory for the Texans. I took the Giants plus 14.5. I didn't realize Drew Lock was hurt when I made the pick. So they put Tommy DeVito in, who he got murdered in the first half. I don't even remember what quarterback they put in to finish the game. It doesn't matter. Ravens win by 21, 35-14. Goddamn you, Giants. This one I got correct. Spread in this game was 5.5 points and didn't think it was going to happen. And it all happened within the last 2 minutes of the game. So the only time this season, I'm going to say shout out to Aaron Rodgers and shout out to Devontae Adams for connecting for that last touchdown. 32-25 final score there. Absolutely amazing catch by Devontae Adams in that final drive over the shoulder, able to keep his feet in bounds and basically like a no-look catch. It was pretty spectacular. So thank God for that. This was an accidental pick where I took the Panthers minus 1.5. I don't know why the fuck I did that. I'm pretty sure I didn't do it on purpose. I feel like it had to do with me sliding through the games. And I know for a fact that I originally picked the Cowboys plus 1.5. Oh, because it's the fucking Panthers. Why would I pick the Panthers? Anyway, especially that small of a spread. Why would I do that? 30-14 final score in favor of the Cowboys. Fuck. This one I am proud to say I chose correctly. Yeah, there's my wife in the comments. Absolute pain. I cannot believe I did that. Buccaneers 40-17. Bucks looking good right now. And coming at the right time because the Ravens, the Falcons are looking really shitty. Gotta widen that lead in the NFC South. But yes, shout out to Mike Evans. Shout out to Baker Mayfield. 4 touchdowns on the day, despite an absolutely god awful first half by him. I mean, the game was closer than this score looks. But Bucky Irving just continuing to tear it up because because Todd Bowles finally realizing, oh my God, I've got a run game. And if they would have let Bucky cook in the first 5 or 6 games of the season, like the Buccaneers would have a better record, but then two, Bucky Irving just would have shown the entire NFL, the entire league, how dominant he was at Oregon. Um, the runability and the juke moves that he's got. Granted, he's not the fastest running back, which is why he fell so far in the draft. But like Barry Sanders, the man can elude tackles, and that's what you need. You just need a guy who can shake tackles, get you yards. He's not a big touchdown guy. I'll give him that. I will give him that. But hey, he's still got 117 yards. Rashad White, he got bumped down to running back too. I'm okay with it because his job is to get the third down yardage, but then most importantly, he's a check down receiver for Baker Mayfield, and he gets touchdowns. He got a receiving touchdown in this game. He's gotten several in the season. This is why, despite the fact that I am dead last in our fantasy league, my two best players have been Rashad White and Bucky Irving. Oh, and CD Lamb. I got to give CD Lamb credit. And Trey McBride of Arizona. There, those four. But anyway, 40-17 over Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Bam. Speaking of former Oregon teammate Bo Nix, Broncos 31-13. This was a defense hungry game for the Broncos. Bo Nix did not have a spectacular game. Defense definitely did the work. Oh, and then also Jonathan Taylor, former Wisconsin running back, pulling a college move by dropping the ball before he crossed the goal line. What the fuck, dude? Like, I've seen this happen multiple times in college games, and I've seen Oregon benefit every single time it's happened, which has been spectacular, especially that one game against Utah. But most notably, to do this in the NFL is absolutely absurd. And I saw some dude make some case on Twitter like, well, I mean, he had the distance and nobody was around him. You should just count the touchdown anyway. Fuck that. The rule is get the ball across the plane. That's how you score the goddamn touchdown. So, Jonathan Taylor, you fucked up. Tone Cruz. Somebody did have them in like a 12 plus leg parlay, and that was the only leg that didn't hit. And it was like a $40 bet that would have gotten the guy like $6,000. If I can find it, I'll repost it on Twitter. But I definitely came across it. Hilarious. And equally as upsetting. Cardinals 13-point victory of the Pats. This was another one. For whatever reason, I chose the Patriots plus 6.5. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking there. Dumb. I had the Lions in this one. And honestly, I will say if Dan Campbell didn't kick that onside kick with like 10 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, I feel like the trajectory of this game would have been altered. But instead, the Bills win by 6. Now everybody's talking about Josh Allen is the overall MVP, blah, blah, blah. Even though statistically Lamar Jackson is still having a better year than Josh Allen. And you know who else is actually having I'm not going to say better, but he's up to par there and nobody's talking about him in MVP conversations? Baker goddamn Mayfield. Dude's thrown for 32 touchdowns in the air. And yes, Lamar Jackson's thrown for what, 34, 35? But yeah, Josh Allen has 12 rushing touchdowns. Sure. Baker's running for 3. Lamar Jackson's running for 3. Baker Mayfield has a 70% completion percentage, despite the fact that he has 14 interceptions on the season, which is way more than Lamar or Josh. Like, I'll give you that. But come on. Like, what are we talking about here as far as like, oh, well, he does this. It's just like, cool. I can say these other statistics are better because of Baker Mayfield, not to mention the fact that they are one win away, pending whether or not the Falcons win tonight against the Raiders or whatever. Yeah, I know how this goes, Stone. I know exactly how this goes. I know. Yeah, I'm just the old expression, I'm tilting at windmills at this point. So yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm just gonna blah 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 blah. Anyway, uh, this one killed me. I cannot believe the Steelers didn't put up a better effort. I mean, TJ Watt getting hurt didn't really, help the situation out for the Steelers, but Eagles win the Battle of Pennsylvania 27-13. Ugh, this one sucked. But the Packers getting their revenge in Seattle for once, because usually for this matchup, it's always the Seahawks getting better of Green Bay. But 30-13 is the final score there. So solid 17-point victory for Go Pack Go. My wife was stoked. But yeah, anyway, here's a look at the conference standings and the division standings, blah, blah, blah. Bills obviously won the East a couple of weeks ago. The Chiefs did win the division title last week in the AFC West, but Broncos and Chargers are still kind of hanging in there for wild card spots. But once again, who knows how hurt Patrick Mahomes is and how long this is going to hinder the team. We'll just have to wait and see. Steelers still on top by a game over the Ravens in the AFC North. And of course, the AFC South, the Texans clinched yesterday with their win. So good for them. Good for them. Uh, but Ravens obviously going to be getting a wild card spot or division, depending on how the last two games shake out. NFC East, if I'm not mistaken, the Eagles clinched their division title yesterday. Good on them. Commanders are more than likely going to be taking a wild card spot. And the fact that the Rams and the Seahawks are tied for first place in the NFC West and the Niners are dead last. What fucking universe are we living in right now? I mean, it's still anybody's game. Like, we still got two games to go. But if I'm not mistaken, the Niners did get eliminated just because the fact that the Rams have the tiebreaker because of the Thursday game, so they're screwed. The Seahawks, of course, did. Yeah, never mind. Niners are out. But the Cardinals are still in. Cardinals still hanging and banging. NFC North, Lions finally getting a second loss. So Vikings licking their lips right now. Could be time for a turnaround, and the Packers aren't too far behind at 10-4 either. But like I said, Bucks up 2 games right now. Game and a half technically on the Falcons. But unfortunately for me and the Buccaneers fans out there, the Falcons did win against the Buccaneers twice this season. So go Raiders tonight, I guess. So it's gonna be kind of weird for when I get to Ben's bets later at the end of the show. So anyway, English Premier League. It was a very frustrating weekend, and I'll get to that at the end of when I talk about this. But Arsenal Everton, a surprising draw. Jordan Pickford, player of the game. Not just for Everton, but just fucking player of the game. Did not allow a goal. And shout out to him. They both split the point. 1-1 there. Ipswich, as you can see, a very last minute goal in stoppage time. 2-1 victory over Wolverhampton. Newcastle blowing the doors off of Leicester City. This one pissed me the hell off for many reasons, because before I left Vegas, I put an EPL bet together and I did the research, because that's one thing Steven Seabright is always critical of me, not doing the research. I usually just put things together at the drop of a hat. But Liverpool had dominated Fulham over the last 5 times they play. So this goes over the last 3 years. And I usually don't put favorites in my parlays, but this week I did. And look what happens. Red card in the 17th minute. So Liverpool's got to play with 10 players the rest of the match, even though Fulham had already scored. So it's actually kind of a miracle that Liverpool even got the draw in this match, but fuck, could have used that win. Nottingham Forest 2-1 victory over Aston Villa. Keep this game in mind as well. And in stoppage time, like very late stoppage time, Nottingham Forest got the win. Crystal Palace, a surprising 2-point victory over Brighton. Did not see that one coming. Glad I didn't pick it. Man United win. 2 goals in 2 minutes over Man City. Man City is just absolutely crumbling right now. It's hilarious to watch, but this is another game that affected me dramatically. Tottenham over Southampton 5-0. No surprise there. Chelsea with the victory 2-1 over Brentford, even though Brentford scored very late in the match. The game was on ice, so they were coasting. And then Bournemouth, West Ham came to a 1-1 draw. That game, of course, was today. So the way things are looking, Chelsea only 2 points back, but Liverpool still has a game in hand right now in the table, followed by Arsenal and Nottingham Forest is your top four. The fact that Man City's not in the top four is hilarious, and I love seeing it. Southampton, Wolverhampton, Ipswich are the bottom three teams in the relegation zone right now. Ipswich doing their best to get out of it. Leicester City trying to stay relevant, trying to get some points, but not doing it. So anyway, this is what I was talking about. Here's the bet that I made in Vegas before we left. Yeah. So there's Liverpool right at the top. Figured they were going to win, and they did not. So that one screwed me. Nottingham Forest over Aston Villa. That happened. Manchester City versus Manchester United. I said was going to be a draw. It probably should have been. How the fuck Man City allows Man United to score 2 goals in 2 minutes is mind blowing, let alone why can't you get another goal in stoppage time to tie it up? So I lost that leg as well. But Bournemouth West Ham nailed it, came to a draw, which was actually kind of surprising and easy, probably the easiest pick that I made, just because of how many times the two teams have drawn over the last like 5, 6 times. But anyway, moving on to the NBA. NBA ratings are down 48% since 2012, down 28% this year alone. Surprisingly, the down since 2012 is, I don't know about that. Um, Especially considering that when the Warriors Cavs played in the NBA finals, that was actually one of the highest rated NBA finals, I think, in what the last like 20 years, at least since the Lakers Celtics matchup in 2008. So that's a bit surprising to see these. So I don't know the validity necessarily of those percentages, but could be overall just for regular season. But anyway, the thing I'm going to comment in regard to this is let's look at what this season has brought us and why, 28%. Oh, this is, and then specifically on ESPN, 28% specifically on ESPN, and why this is happening. Well, the first thing I want to bring up is Bronny James, so LeBron James Jr. And going back to the NBA draft, and the first thing I'll say is, can you name anybody from the NBA draft of 2024 who's actually having like a solid season? Maybe Zach Edey in Memphis, Donovan Clingan for sure for Portland, and then I would say Dalton Connect with the Lakers. So outside of that, is there anybody else who's just like really, hey, this was a great pick? No, not really. Like even like most of the top guys that came over from Europe aren't having that great of a season. And personally, I can say that because the fact that I saw them in summer league and they did not look good there either. So you have 3 diamonds in the rough out of a relatively lackluster NBA draft who are trying to carry themselves in the association and not doing well. Stephen Castle of San Antonio, I will give you credit on that one, Logan Herrera. I will 100% give you credit on that one. He is actually having a pretty stellar year. But more importantly, it's just like we go with Bronny James, who shouldn't have been drafted in the first place, who's now playing in the G League. And it was only brought up just because the fact that it was a PR firestorm because, oh, we're going to have Braun and Bronny, playing in an NBA game, the only time we have a father son, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, I don't care. And yeah, people watched that game, people tuned in, ESPN, ABC was all about it. But it's like after that, nobody cared. It's like Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park. Nobody cares. So you got that. Then you have all these marquee matchups, yes, on ESPN, but it's just like there are certain teams that are playing that are like dominant teams of years past who are having terrible years this year. Denver being one of them, surprisingly, and a couple other teams. And then you have smaller market, no attention given to them, like typically like the Houston Rockets. I'm not saying Houston is a small market, but I mean, they've been bad for so long. And now they're actually having a good year, but they don't have any games on TV because of the fact they've been so bad for so long. And so you got to blame it on ESPN and the schedule they put together and the product that they put in front of us. And so it's just like, yeah, nobody cares about these teams anymore. People want underdog stories in this mix. And so that's the situation we're in right now. And especially like going into the standings as we have now, Cavaliers on top. Is anybody talking about that? No. Everybody's still talking about Boston winning the championship last year, which rightfully so. They are the number 2 team right now. The New York Knicks, yeah, they got KAT. They lost DiVincenzo. They got rid of, other players to bring them in, brought in Bridges from Brooklyn. They're the number 3 seed right now. Bucks are in 6. I mean, they started off the year so bad, then they got on the heater, and now they're on the downslope again, even though they are in the NBA Cup. Shout out to them. But overall, it's like the Heat are looking to trade Jimmy Butler, so nobody's going to care there anytime soon. Nobody's talking about how good the Orlando Magic are right now at the 4 seed. The show goes on. And then, as I was saying, in the Western Conference, Thunder on top. I mean, yeah, people are talking about that, but Ja Morant and the Grizzlies having a bounce back of a year and the number 2 seed. Houston Rockets at 3. Mavericks kind of getting their stuff together at the 4. Nuggets at 5. Warriors start off the year hot. Now they're falling apart. They're down to 7. And then the Timberwolves surprisingly in the 8 spot right now. So it's no surprise to me why the Wizards in shambles. Yeah, I mean, we all saw that one coming, but Alexander Sarr is not doing that team any justice whatsoever. I feel so bad for Jordan Poole. He's the only talent on that team. So it's no surprise that NBA ratings are down just because the fact that there's no effort being played there. Nobody plays defense anymore. Like, that's one thing I'm going to criticize till the end of time. It's like, your job is to play offense and defense. Why do you think you can get away with only doing one? So anyway, that's all I'll say on that. So moving on to the NHL. Maple Leafs still on top, baby, by 2 points over the Panthers. The Bruins, I guess, are getting their shit together. I hate to see that. But the Capitals back on top in the Metropolitan Division. I do enjoy seeing that. And I know the Leafs over the Devils last week is one of the reasons why that happened. Winnipeg Jets back on top in the Central Division. Golden Knights still clanging and banging in the Pacific. The poor Sharks, man, they're about to be the worst team. And no, the Predators and Blackhawks are pretty bad. Which reminds me of a hockey bet that I made last week, where I think I had the Flames in a parlay over the Predators, and Flames are middle of the Pacific Division. Predators are dead last, and yet the Flames were underdogs in that game. And it's like, okay, so I chose them because I feel like, yeah, this should be a win for Calgary. It was not. It was not. Vegas had that one right. I fucked up. Anyway, moving to baseball, Juan Soto, the talk of New York, more so than he was playing for the Yankees, getting himself a 15-year, $750+ million contract from the New York Metropolitans. Good move by them. Good move. Kid's already got a World Series ring, which he did in his rookie year. His talent, I still feel like, has not peaked. And of course, after years of the walls to benefit hitters being brought in a little bit more and a little bit more at Citi Field, it's probably going to, do good things for him. Whether or not it's going to get the Mets into the World Series, time will tell on that one. So we'll wait and see. We got 15 years to figure that one out. But the Yankees, of course, not ones to be left at the altar waiting. They started doing their work early. So pick it up. We're so far. They haven't made an official announcement, but the word on the street is that Max Fried is going to the New York Yankees. 8 years, $218 million. And the other for sure thing that has happened is Devin Williams. I'm sorry, Steven, to bring this up. Devin Williams going from the Milwaukee Brewers as a closer to the New York Yankees in exchange for Nestor Cortez, another player, and some cash consideration. So the one thing I will say in regard to the Yankees, and I've been saying for years that they need to get rid of Brian Cashman as general manager, need to move on to something different. But, hey, depending on how the season goes, maybe there's a little bit of magic left in the bottle for Cashman after all. The one thing that the Yankees desperately needed was pitching. And the irony that I see out of this deal, the Devin Williams, Nestor Cortez deal, is look at the final game that either player had for their respective team. Nestor Cortez, of course, gave up one of the most prolific home runs in World Series history, the Grand Slam, to Freddie Freeman. And then Devin Williams for the Milwaukee Brewers gave up the Pete Alonso eventual game-winning home run in the NLDS. So it kind of a weird swap. I like to look at stuff like that. But I think overall it should being the key word, should benefit the New York Yankees going forward. Whether or not these two moves in particular are going to make them a World Series contender again next season, time will tell on that. Because at least they still got like some pretty solid bats, although they did get rid of um or just not they didn't necessarily get rid of him. They just decided not to do the qualifying offer or whatever to Anthony Rizzo. So we'll see what happens with him and where he ends up and whether or not he's going to actually just like the Yankees will just pick him back up for less or not. But the Yankees still have the bats. They're steadily improving not only their starting pitching, but now obviously their bullpen, which were the two things they needed to work on. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I will say they're definitely a top four front runner to get back to the World Series. I strongly feel like they're going to win the American League East again, unless the Orioles do some stuff or whatever, but we'll see. But of course, the last thing I'm going to leave this on in regard to baseball is the fucking A's. And I can't even call them the Oakland A's because they don't even have a city name in their name anymore. Fucking John Fisher. Anyway, 3 years, $67 million deal to starting pitcher Luis Severino. And I hate this deal for many reasons. Like, realistically, it's a smart move for the A's organization going forward to get a pitcher like this in their rotation. But the reason I hate this is the amount, the $67 million, is because the last time the A's gave a noteworthy contract to a player, it was to third baseman and perennial Gold Glover Eric Chavez. It was a 5-year, $66 million deal. So the fact that they had the stones to go $1 million over to make it seem like, oh yeah, we're spending money again. Fuck you. Fuck you, John Fisher. Sell the fucking team. Like, this is so fucking full of shit and such a slap in the face to A's fans, especially in Oakland. Like, what are you fucking doing, man? And they're still going to fall under the requirement to actually not be, a poverty franchise and, dip into the revenue sharing. Like, the other reason why they're even spending money in the first place is because the fact that the Players Association slapped them with the possibility of not being able to get money from the revenue sharing unless they actually spent money, which they're just barely doing. So fuck them, man. Fuck this shit, man. Straight up poverty, dude. It's so fucking insulting to people who actually care about this team and especially care about the city of Oakland. So anyway. My picks from the last time I did the show, obviously I got my ass rocked. SMU did not win the ACC title game against Clemson. Nail biter, regardless, but they still lost. But hey, at least they got in the playoffs. Brentford did not draw with Aston Villa. I believe it was a 3-1 final score there in favor of Aston Villa. The Bucks lost the Celtics, I believe, by 5. But hey, the Vikings did beat Kirk Cousins in his homecoming game. So 1-3 on that week. So let's see how I do for this next week. What do I got? Well, as I said, college football playoff starts this weekend. So I've got Texas over Clemson. It's a money line offer right there at -400. I've got the Falcons over the Raiders tonight, even though I kind of hope the Raiders win. But I feel like the Raiders are fully in tank mode because they desperately need a good quarterback. Whether or not it's going to be Cam Ward or Shador Sanders, nobody really knows. So they could probably fall on a sword and take the loss there and help their draft pick status. I've got the Rockets over the Pelicans later this week on the 19th. And you know what? I got Bournemouth over Man United this weekend. So yeah, yeah, I'm feeling kind of strong about that. So anyway, the last thing I'm going to bring up, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, is my wife and I went to Vegas over the weekend, or not over the weekend. We went Sunday through like Thursday of last week, and I'm man enough to admit I got my shit rocked The craps table, okay. I can't say it didn't go well. It didn't go great. The first roll that we had at Park MGM, yeah, we got our shits kicked in on that one. But once we got to El Cortez, which was Tuesday, because we always try to spend one day downtown, my first roll was spectacular, except for the fact that I couldn't roll a 4 or a goddamn 9 to save my life, which is weird because usually 9 is a number I can hit often. But basically what I'm getting at is the 3 bonus bets up top, the all smalls, the all talls, and the make 'em all. Like, I've made them all before. I talked about this story a couple weeks ago when my wife and I went to Wisconsin for her cousin's wedding, and we went to a casino out there, Ho Chunk Casino. And I hit them all talls, the all smalls, and the make 'em all. So I was on a solid pathway to do it again on my first roll at El Cortez. But once I really focused on trying to nail a 4 and a 9, um, it didn't work out, and I sevened out eventually, and made some decent money on that, and then went around the table. It didn't go so great. Then another shooter came in. We started getting our money back, but then I put too much time and effort into that, and I should have walked away like once we got our money back, and that was my idiot fault. So, uh, the tail end was the last 2 rolls I had point 0.7 out. PSO. Don't ever do that. Don't PSO. It sucks and it fucking blows. But anyway, the one good story I'm going to have from this is in regard to my wife, and she doesn't know I'm posting this photo, but it is her. She finally hit her first major on a slot machine. This was at New York, New York. After I'm not gonna say we both got our asses kicked. Like, she actually did pretty well on Let It Ride. I lost all my money. I lost all my money 14 hours before we left to go home, which has never happened to me. Usually I'm leaving Vegas with something. This time, not so much. I think I left with $2 in my pocket. But no, my wife kicked ass and she finally got a major. It was for what was that? $628 on a Dragon Link. It was the Panda Magic, which is very fitting considering the fact that we both call each other Panda Bear. Um, yeah, it's cute and gushy and whatever. But what was even better is during my meeting that I had before we flew back to Oakland, she was in Park MGM and playing some other slot machines, and she crushed another one, which I forgot to grab a photo of. But she got like a super mansion bonus on Huff and even more Puff. Got like another $400 on that. So I mean, the last 12 hours for her were spectacular. I mean, I finished with over a G in winnings on that. Yeah, that was just in the last 12 hours. Like, we both got our asses kicked, throughout the week. But either way, she left with money. I'm very proud of her, very happy for her. So considering how things had gone like early in the year for me, pretty well, she needed this. Me, probably not so much, but it really sucked to not have any money in those last 14 hours. It was depressing. But anyway, that's gonna do it for the show this week. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Flip the script. We're gonna do something different tomorrow, but because like no college football is going on for to continue Duck Dynasty at least for another week, we're gonna put that on hold. Uh, but one thing we are gonna do is later this week, I will do not necessarily flip the script, but we're gonna do we had talked about doing like a walkthrough of a video game. Red Dead Redemption Part 2 is like one of the games that you guys were talking about us doing. Uh, we're gonna do Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Brand new game. So I got an outfit coming and everything, much like we do for Duck Dynasty. So once that's in, I will get that figured out for later this week, and we will start doing that. But for tomorrow, gonna play a little Call of Duty Black Ops just to make sure the connection is still good. Because obviously, when we tried to do the Big Ten championship game, it kept cutting in and out, and so hopefully I got everything figured out. But hey, we got 2 Monday night football games tonight. I wanted to wrap it up before. Wait, Joe Mauer blew the horn? Oh my god. Um, but hey, go Vikings. I'm okay with that. Go Vikings. Um, And yeah, even though I picked the Falcons like a dipshit, I kind of hope the Raiders win. Kind of hope the Raiders win. It's gonna help the Buccaneers out in the long run. So anyway, enjoy the night, and as always, take it easy. And if you don't, take it sleazy. Peace.